it's not a very good expository device, because there's a lot of things in the expository device that just don't translate, and this is a problem for the analogical interpretation. Poetry is talked about at length, and when Socrates says that the Homeric poems are bad because they show heroes either being afraid or they show heroes in the underworld regretting the actions they've taken, Socrates says that these poems would make our soldiers less courageous in warfare. How does my soul participate in warfare? Against other souls? I mean, individual bodies may be able to fight, but I don't know how souls fight. It doesn't really seem to line up. I mean, a lot of the earlier passages, the letters passage and the fire sticks passage, definitely back up an analogical interpretation, but not a mere analogical interpretation. There are some things in the account of the city that just do not translate into an account of the soul. So given that this exists as a problem in the analogical interpretation, I want to try to establish more positively what an alternative might be and why the analogical interpretation might fall a bit short. Now, Socrates defines justice at 433b as doing one's own work. This is applied both to the city and the soul. It involves these parts doing their own work. So reason gives orders to appetite. Appetite isn't supposed to dissuade your reason. Individual parts in the soul do their own work. Individual citizens in the city do their own work. This is all tied into a principle of specialization, where a cobbler is a better cobbler if he does only that and doesn't dabble in other professions. So justice is this kind of well-functioning of the individual parts, and this leads to the well-functioning of the entire unity of which those parts belong to. So consider the example of a hand. I'm sure most of you who've read the Nicomachean Ethics will remember this from Aristotle, that when Aristotle talks about parts and wholes, he talks about a hand. Now if I look at my hand, I see I have 5 fingers, they all move the way they're supposed to, they're all attached to my palm. I rightly conclude that I have a whole hand, and that whole hand is functioning well. But if I were to cut my hand off, it wouldn't be a hand anymore. This is what Aristotle tells us, that its ability to function in sync for the good of the whole body would just be lost if it were cut off. Even if the same basic structure were to exist within the hand, even after it were cut off, it wouldn't be a hand anymore. It couldn't function anymore, separate from the unity of which it is a part. Now, I think where the analogical interpretation starts to run into some problems is that they mistake whether the individual person is a whole or a part. There's certainly one secondary sense in which you can talk about a whole person. In the same way you can talk about a whole hand. I have a whole hand. But the hand itself is not a whole. It's part of the whole of my body, just like an individual citizen is part of the whole of a state. Socrates says this explicitly at 369b to c in the Republic. He says, "I think a city comes to be because none of us is self-sufficient, but we all need many things. And because people need many things, and because one person calls on a second out of one need, and on a third out of a different need, many people gather together in a single place and live together as partners and helpers." This is exactly what Aristotle says in the Ethics and Politics. Man, by his nature, is not self-sufficient on his own. He's a political animal. This means that the city is the whole, and individual human beings are parts of that organic unity. So justice, spoken of completely and without qualification, regulates the interaction of parts with an eye towards the good of the most complete whole of which those parts belong to. To talk about that with reference to human beings is to talk about the city, because none of the parts, none of the individual people are self-sufficient by themselves. This is why by the end of the book, it doesn't look as though Socrates has actually answered the question that was asked to him in books 1 and 2, which was essentially, Socrates, tell me why justice is profitable for the individual. And it doesn't look like Socrates answers that question. He gives a lot of metaphysical systematizing he talks a lot about ethics, but he doesn't tell you what you get by being a just person. Now, the reason it looks this way is not because justice is not profitable, but because justice is not for the individual. The whole point of the Republic is that Glaucon's challenge didn't make any sense. When Glaucon says, Socrates, I want you to praise justice by itself, and not with anything else like reputation added onto it, Socrates immediately, with only a very brief discussion of his methodology, begins to talk about a human city. Justice by itself, with nothing added or subtracted. It doesn't make sense to talk about an individual, just person in isolation. Now, in a sense, I certainly agree that the Republic is making a bold and important claim about the way an individual should organize his or her own life. They should have reason in command and have spirit and appetite in the proper positions beneath reason. But why is that the just thing to do? It's the just thing to do because citizens whose soul is structured in that way will act in a way wherein the city can function as an organic unity, where its parts can function as they're supposed to, and therefore the whole can become the thing it is supposed to be. So if you're a worker and you understand justice, and you understand that the city is necessary for your survival, your reason should tell you to do your work. And if you're a warrior and you know what you're supposed to do, you will know to do your work. And if you're a ruler, you will understand the theoretical structure of the whole city, and you will govern well. Now, I do want to point out that Socrates thinks that appetite is the element of the soul that is dominant in the worker, and that spirit is the element of soul that is dominant in the warrior, and vice versa. And this is why the warrior's specific function is to go to war, because that's the one that most relies on spirit. And that's why the worker's function is to make goods and sell them, because that's the function that most relies on appetite. So it is absolutely true that we structure the city, given that we have different kinds of people who are suited to different tasks, we structure the city based on how your individual disposition qualifies you to participate within the grander unity that is the city. But it is still necessary for everyone in the city to have enough reason and enough spirit and enough appetite to have it not interrupt their functioning within regards to the entirety of the city. So the Republic is making ethical claims, but those ethical claims fit within the broader political claims of which they are a part. To try to make that point more fully, when Thrasymachus is chewing out Socrates, saying that this justice is high-minded nonsense, Socrates attempts to refute him by saying, do you, this is Thrasymachus, think that a city, an army, a band of robbers or thieves, or any other tribe with an unjust common purpose would be able to achieve it if they were unjust to each other? This is the exact same idea that I've been trying to elaborate on. The word tribe in this translation is ethnos. It's where we get words like ethnicity. The refutation of Thrasymachus is that to think of the individual in this way, as being able to act for himself without any regard to the community in which he belongs, is just wrong-headed. It doesn't make sense. Individuals aren't like that. Individuals belong in communities. You aren't making a person a good person by living a Thrasymachian kind of lifestyle. He wouldn't be a person at all. At 352a, Socrates says, injustice has the power, first, to make whatever it arises in, whether it is a city, a family, an army, or anything else, incapable of achieving anything as a unit because of the civil wars and the differences it creates. And second, it makes that unit an enemy to itself. It's clearly, he has listed city, family, army. These are not, he says or anything else, so presumably the soul also fits in there. But he has explicitly included the political establishment. He has explicitly included the polis as one of the things which injustice